There is now a Europe-wide manhunt on for one of France's most notorious armed robbers. Rédoine Faïd managed to escape from this prison behind me. Somehow he managed to smuggle in enough explosives to blow his way through 5 separate security doors, the last one of which is behind me right there. You can still see some of the damage.
Welcome to Greatest Prison Escapes. I'm your host, Billy Hayes. I know a little about escaping from prison. On October 2nd, 1975, I escaped from a Turkish prison 5 years into a life sentence. The story of my escape was the subject of my book and the Oscar-winning film, Midnight Express. Whatever got us there, everyone in prison is thinking of one thing: getting out. This series is about those who make the ultimate decision, seeking freedom at any cost. On this episode of Greatest Prison Escapes, we look at the life of Rédoine Faïd, a man who grew up poor, whose biggest joy as a child was watching American crime movies, who went on to become a notorious gangster, replicating and often surpassing the movies that served as his inspiration. Rédoine grew up poor. His mother and father were Algerian immigrants who worked tirelessly to support the family. While Rédoine watched American heist movies, he realized at a young age that life wasn't fair. And people like Bonnie and Clyde, what they did might not have been lawful, but it was fair. Motivated by these movies, Rédoine Faïd began to run petty theft operations. In addition to drug dealing, he was organizing robberies, earning him the nickname of Doc, or the Brain. Shortly after turning 18, Rédoine symbolically celebrated his graduation from boyhood to manhood by committing a man's crime. He robbed his first armored car. By the early 90s, Rédoine organized shipments of cannabis from Spain using limousines. But Rédoine wasn't satisfied just making a dishonest buck. He would once again up the stakes, paying homage to one of America's favorite heist movies, Point Break. Rédoine and his associates started robbing banks wearing masks of French political leaders. By 1998, the heat had gotten so red hot that Rédoine Faïd was forced to flee. He landed in Israel. There he attempted to evade law enforcement by blending in with the Hasidic Jewish community.
He blended in quite easily in the countries that he frequented. You know, in the south of France, Mediterranean, olive complexion. At one point, he evaded escape by wearing a burqa, but his walk alerted an astute police officer to the fact that he could be a man, not a woman, and he was then arrested.
After spending the last 10 years of his life outfoxing and embarrassing everyone from corner market owners and bank managers to President Jacques Chirac himself, he was finally captured and extradited back to France. Rédoine was sentenced to 30 years. He passed the time by writing an autobiography outlining his criminal exploits. Despite being sentenced to 3 decades, Mr. Faïd was released on parole in 2009.
He was seen as a hero, a Robin Hood type character in the ghettos of Paris, where he was brought up as the son of an Algerian immigrant. He was seen as a hero, I think, by the press at that time as well, because he was suave, sophisticated, good-looking. He was smooth.
After his release, he published his autobiography, Robber, From the Projects to Organized Crime, to wide acclaim.
You've said before that you want to start a new career advising filmmakers on the writing and producing of the gangster film. You were such a fan of the genre growing up. And looks like you might have some prospective opportunities, no?
Yes, my experience is vital. If film scriptwriters want to be authentic, they need experience like mine.
Is that the best way to keep you from returning to a life of crime?
Boredom is the enemy of going straight. After being pushed around and lobotomized in jail, these new possibilities are giving me a chance to start a new life. If I was just hanging around, I would plunge back into crime again.
Redoine was trying to get into Hollywood as an on-set consultant for action and heist movies.
Have you given any thought into any other type of work?
Honestly, no, not yet. I need something complicated to do. I can't just sit in a cubicle all day. Aziz.
They say you can lie to others, but you can't lie to yourself. Redoine was actually being quite honest. He needed something challenging to do. His newfound fame and notoriety, it just wasn't going to be enough to keep him out of trouble. Another month went by with Redoine not making any headway breaking into Hollywood. So he met up with his old friends just to talk.
So, you dragged me all the way here. You must have a sales pitch.
I do. I didn't want to tell you in front of your wife.
She barely said a word to me the day after you came over. She knows. Where's Amit?
Told him I wanted to talk to you alone. It's the three of us together, out in public. Try to eat.
Smart.
Had a good teacher. Oh my God, you're smiling? But you're going to say don't blow smoke up your ass, so flattery will get you nowhere.
Let's hear your pitch.
At first, he refused. But after they offered to cut him in as a leader, where all he'd have to do is the planning, he reluctantly accepted.
The brain is back. Yes.
As the wave of bold and elaborate robberies returned to France, Rédoine Faïd was back on the radar of the French authorities. Something Redoine always stuck to, never in writing, always in cash. He was putting that lesson to use, never participating in the jobs himself, never corresponding over the phone, avoiding locations that the French authorities might have bugged. He wasn't even spending the money he was making. There was no paper trail of his involvement at all. He was a ghost. It would take something catastrophic to catch him. Determined not to go back to prison, Redoine was living up to his childhood nickname, the Brain. Every job was painstakingly cerebral. His only mistake? Not getting out while he was ahead.
Had he resisted the siren's call of the life of crime, he might have avoided catastrophe. Officer Aurélie Fouquet was a single mother who only recently returned to her beat from maternity leave. While she was on patrol with a partner, her mother looked after her infant son. The sound of gunfire and tires screeching across the pavement marred the idyllic sunny morning of May 20th, 2010, when Officer Fouquet and a partner responded to a call for assistance in the pursuit of a white van near a Parisian suburb. Heavy traffic forced the white van onto an off-ramp on the D1. They lost control and crashed. It was while they were attempting to hijack another vehicle that Officer Fouquet intercepted them. The men were exhausted and desperate. They responded like cornered animals.
1 mai 2010, des malfaiteurs tentent de braquer un fourgon blindé à Villiers-sur-Marne. Aurélie Fouquet, policière municipale, tente de les interpeller. Âgée de 26 ans, elle était mère d'un enfant de 14 mois.
Tant sont venus écrire sur le registre de condoléances, qui laisse derrière elle un bébé de 19 mois.
Au nom de la République française, les meurtriers d'Aurélie Fouquet, je le dis devant son cercueil, seront punis avec la sévérité qu'exige l'ignominie de leur crime.
Regarding the death of Aurélie Fouquet, she lived and worked in that area. She wasn't bussed in like a national police officer. So it would have been tragic to both the community and to her friends and family, but also to the police officers involved. They would be determined to catch the perpetrator.
She was the first female police officer killed in France's history. Thousands, including then-President of France, Nicolas Sarkozy, would attend her funeral. The media was in a frenzy, calling for Redoine's arrest. And in one day, public opinion of Redoine flipped.
The sort of romantic nature of his Robin of Sherwood existence would have completely been turned on its head with the death of this officer.
I didn't kill her. I never killed anyone. Where's the evidence, huh?
I definitely think that, you know, when you are somebody that is in the media the way that Redoine was, you have somebody that, at least in law enforcement, he needs to be humbled.
For the robbery, he was sentenced to 25 years. But the French prosecution wasn't satisfied. They dragged him back to court to be tried on new charges: complicity in the murder of Officer Fouquet.
Whether he was involved in the death and the shooting of her, I cannot say, but there seems to be very little evidence and no claims that Faid was present at the scene of that murder.
If convicted, he would be given a life sentence on top of the 25 years. Other than the word of the thugs, there was no evidence connecting Redoine to the murder. He was livid, but clear-headed enough to know one thing: a jury wasn't going to care about a lack of evidence. They wanted him to hang.
Pendant cette semaine de procès, Elisabeth Fouquet
nous a donné raison. Voilà, et puis bien, nous allons continuer notre combat.
Knowing a jury would railroad him despite the lack of evidence, he devised a plan, one that would show France just how connected he was. Despite Redoine's massive network, his most crucial person of his first escape would be his wife. According to the French authorities, Rédoine Faïd had his wife sneak a very special gift inside a package.
Redoine, I'm certain, was, you know, able to fund better treatment while he was in, and he had money. I mean, and he had that money stashed.
Happy birthday, my love.
After switching getaway cars, Redoine planned on traveling to Belgium and going into indefinite hiding. But that plan hit a snag.
How much do I have left?
For Belgium? Not enough. Oh, you look like you have an idea.
We pull off a bunch of smaller jobs. Lift some fat wallets off rich pedestrians, steal some things we can sell at pawn shops. Jobs small enough to stay off the radar until we have enough money for passports and documents that will hold up to scrutiny. Then we get the hell away from France.
Despite keeping their robberies small scale, Rédoine Faïd was still given the title of France's public enemy #1. They had managed to give the French authorities the slip, but the son of the owner of the bed and breakfast became suspicious when Redoine and Aziz paid for 4 months' lodging in advance, plus a sizable tip. After the tip, investigators put a few undercover men on the bed and breakfast and confirmed it was him. Interior Minister Manuel Valls hailed the police for the thorough and effective investigation that led to Redoine's recapture with absolutely no bloodshed. Redoine would spend the next 5 years at the Sud Francilian prison in Ros-Saint-Amand, a maximum security prison. After all the legal dust had cleared, he received a 40-year sentence. As you might have guessed, Redoine had no intention of doing that much time.
The sentencing that Redoine got in France is much different than what he would have gotten in the United States. He would have been, as the person that planned the job, he would have been accountable for everything that would have flown from that conspiracy.
As the years went by, scrutiny of Redoine would lessen, and his talents for subversion and egress would fade from the forefront of public minds.
Brother, you look well.
The best I've been in years. Good to see you, Brahim.
They landed, they had a petrol-driven Husqvarna disc cutter. They just cut through locks like a hot knife through butter. They had rifles with them, they had smoke bombs with them. They just marched straight in, released Rédoine Faïd from the sort of interview meeting room where he was meeting his brother. That was obviously arranged.
Détourner l'hélicoptère et pris en otage le pilote, s'était personnellement présenté à l'aérodrome plus une cavale qui, selon la cellule d'enquête, pourrait durer des jours, des mois, voire des années.
Well, a French criminal has made a daring escape from prison in northern France.
His name is Rédoine Faïd, and he's really a, I would say, almost Al Capone or Scarface type criminal in France.
Roughly 3 weeks after the escape, Redoine was still at large.
He had once again vanished until a couple of police officers thought they spotted him at a gas station. But they had families and had spent the last decade hearing stories about Redoine. So they gave it a few minutes before they called it in.
The car would later be found abandoned at a rest stop. The engine was still hot. The police were disappointed, but this confirmed that Redoine was local, alleviating fears that he had fled the country. A lack of funds and technological improvements, coupled with the proliferation of the internet over the past 20 years, made it much harder to go into hiding in another country. So Redoine returned home. Redoine couldn't take a chance showing his face. He couldn't reach out to his brother. He couldn't spend a night with his beautiful, loyal wife. He couldn't even reach out to any of his criminal associates to pull a few jobs for money. For Redoine, this was no longer about legal X's and O's. He had broken out of prison a second time, just to be forced into the open-air prison that was his life, reduced to complete anonymity. 3 months after his daring helicopter escape, Rédoine Faïd would call his brother and ask if he wanted to watch a movie. Police were ready to pounce. His journey into the glamorous and ugly world of organized crime was ending how it began. But instead of his whole life being ahead of him, as a dashing, modern-day John Dillinger, he was now 45. The empty canvas of his youth was gone. All that remained was 53 years in prison. Unlike the movies that got him into crime, Redoine doesn't get to turn off the TV and have everything return to normal. The rest of his story will be behind bars.
Rédoine Faïd became a victim of his own success. He mentioned once in an interview that bloodshed would mar the cleanness of his craft or his work. He looked at it as work. He romanticized it. And it ended in bloodshed, and it ended in a complete turnaround with the public's view of him and his family.
Redoine was kept in solitary for his first couple of years back, being subjected to daily strip searches. Once out of solitary, he said his current prison sentence felt like he was mummified in a sarcophagus. He took to writing a memoir, mainly as a way to maintain his sanity. Outlaw, Armed and Dangerous was released in 2020 with great celebration by the few adoring fans he still had.
I still think he's a hero to the people in the ghettos, both in Paris and the rest of France. I feel he's a hero to probably any prisoner because they all have plenty of time to dream about escaping, as he did twice in Hollywood fashion. But the people of France, no.
His second book has a much more somber tone, candidly saying that embracing the life of crime was his biggest mistake. In all of the movies Redoine idolized, not one of the gangsters ever survived. maybe he would have preferred to suffer the same fate as his idols that rotting in prison. I'm Billy Hayes. Join us again next time on Greatest Prison Escapes.